Greetings from Seattle on today's Substack Live session from me, Christine Sine, and Walking in Wonder. It's interesting. Today is a rather dreary looking day, not supposed to be very warm, but I don't think that it is stopping my friends from getting out and protesting on this No Kings Saturday. All across the country. And I think in other parts of the world too, there are definitely lots of protests going on. And it's my hope that these protests will be conducted with humour, with joy, and lots of laughter, but with no violence and no expressions of hate. It's probably, unfortunately, a little I suppose you could say naive to think that that's going to be the case, but I do hope that there will be that response of joy and of humour and of love rather than of hate. But you can imagine that this has had me thinking a lot about Jesus as King. In a few weeks' time, the last Sunday of the liturgical year is called Christ the King Sunday. And as this approaches, I think it's really important for us to think about what does it mean for us to see Christ as a king? Is he really a king, at least in the way that we tend to think of kings, or is it something else? Is there some other kind of meaning to this? I know that today many of my friends and many people who call themselves followers of Jesus are uncomfortable with the concept of kingship as we think of kingship, because it's much more of an earthly view of kingship rather than of a heavenly view. And you know what? I think that God is uncomfortable with that view of kingship too. It's interesting in 1 Samuel 8, verses 11 to 18, when the Israelites are asking for a king, God gives them a very succinct view of what kings will do for them. And it doesn't look very good at all. He will enslave them. He will tax them. He will take their sons for the military, and he will take their their women as servants, and some of them even as slaves. And it's interesting that Jesus also seemed to avoid using the word king for himself. He seemed much more comfortable with the term Son of Man, even than he did with the term Son of God, and never called himself the king at all. In fact, he ran away when they tried to make him king. His response was to disappear. And if we think of him as a king, it's a very different kind of approach to kingship than the one we see modeled in this world throughout the whole of history. It's a servant, washing feet, entertaining those despised in society, befriending the outcasts, bringing justice for the poor. This is the image that we get of the person that Jesus was and the person that Jesus asks us to be. But unfortunately, this image of Jesus as a different kind of king, as a loving, life-giving kind of king, was very quickly subsumed by the culture. Constantine became a king. Constantine, who was emperor, became a Christian in the 3rd century, and boom, he started to recreate Jesus in his own image rather than seeing himself as being created in the image of God and of Jesus. And I think to myself, wow, what a different view of Jesus would we have, and what a different view of what it means to be a king would we have if Constantine had been transformed by Jesus rather than him working to transform Jesus into his own image. So, of course, what do we think of when we think of Christ the King today, do we see that servant leader that Jesus was? I don't want to call him a king because, as I said, many people don't like that term, but he was indeed a leader. And he says, be like me, be loving, be kind, be compassionate, be caring for those at the margins, bring justice to the poor, see equality come to everybody, set the prisoners free. This is the kind of imagery of kingship that Jesus gives us, not the kind of imagery that is being protested against today, the imagery of kingship coming through elevating a person into power, through um, uh, and through oppressing the poor, through uh, injustice, through hate, through violence. This is not the kind of imagery of poverty that we see of kingship. I'm sorry. I've got a little bit of distracting noise in the background here. And so it's kind of a little bit harder for me to focus. But, I would like you today, if you are involved in the protests or if you aren't involved in the protests, to think about what it means for you to see Jesus as King. Firstly, I'd like you to ask yourself, does this transform your image of what it means to be a king? Or does this transform your image of who Jesus is? Because there are those two alternatives. If we see Jesus as a different kind of king, as a king who is a servant, as a king who cares for the poor, as a king who is loving and kind and compassionate and sharing in everything, then kingship has changed. If, however, we transform Jesus into the violent, power-seeking kind of image of kingship that we are protesting against today, then our image of Jesus has changed. And I think it's something that we really need to think about. So I ask you, what kind of Jesus do you follow? Is it a Jesus who is a servant? Is it a Jesus who cares for the poor, is compassionate towards those who are hurting? Is it a Jesus who wants to bring justice for those who have been unjustly treated? Or is it a Jesus who seeks after power, who is willing to find power through violence and hatred? It's so important because this is so much at the heart of our view of what it means to be a Christian today. So I do hope that you will think about this and that you will become the kind of follower of a servant Jesus that Jesus wants us to be. Amen. And thank you for listening.